It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch. I'm your host, Mains, my colleague in the danger zone in Rainford, waiting for a call from Baltimore. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
If they do ring me, then they are seriously in trouble. As we know, my knees they look like a mash unit themselves.
For those who are unaware, we're recording this about 9 o'clock, Thursday night, 9th of September, and in back-to-back plays, it looks like the Ravens lost Gus Edwards and Marcus Peters to season-ending ACLs after already losing two other running backs. Neil, please remind everybody who we believe will be the starting running back now on Sunday.
The starting running back will be Tyson Williams. They will no doubt elevate Le'Veon Bell from their practice squad, but I assume that Latavius Murray is speaking with Eric DaCosta as we are speaking now.
I believe so. It's week one. As they say in the trade, this is why we've lifted all those weights. New season, slightly new format. What we're going to do is this week we've got plugged into the mains will be a seasons prediction format. We're going to look at season predictions for the teams and then some fantasy predictions. Neil has got fantasy darling and fantasy loser of the week. He's got three fantasy darlings which he will be hitting us with every week, and then we're going to both give you a fantasy prediction of the week in relation to the games going on in week one. As always, we'll probably record on Thursdays, so we won't really focus on the Thursday game. I would be surprised if anything else other than a Tampa Bay win happens tonight, but you never know. Neil, let's get this party started and let's plug into the mains. As the other 10 million NFL podcasts will be doing this week, we're going to do predictions. Because
that's how original we are.
Correct. Simple things first, Neil. We're going to look at playoff teams, an AFC title game, an NFC title game, a Super Bowl with a result, which we will hold against you if completely and utterly wrong, and totally ignore if you get kind of right. So first of all, Neil, please give me your 4 AFC division winners.
The Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Cleveland Browns.
Okay, I've gone Browns, Bills, Titans, Chiefs. So our only difference is Neil won't quit former Philadelphia players and coaches. Can you give me the 3 wild card teams, please?
The Baltimore Ravens, the Los Angeles Chargers, and
Is he going to do it?
The Miami Dolphins.
He is going to do it. I am picking the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to do mine in order. So Baltimore Ravens. The New England Patriots, because I'm a shitbag. And the LA Chargers as well. So going totally again. The Chargers looking at Baltimore saying keep away from us because we've got our own bad luck and we don't need you. Let's move over to the NFC, Neil. NFC, 4 division winners, please.
Washington, the Green Bay Packers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the San Francisco 49ers.
Okay, I've gone for Packers, Bucks, Rams, Cowboys.
You are a shitbag.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm picking the best teams to win their division. And the 3 wildcard teams, please.
The Minnesota Vikings, the Los Angeles Rams.
Can he do it after the show earlier in the week? That's the question.
And the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, I mean, you can hate them all you want, but I think the question, if for those who didn't, we had a full and frank discussion on the Seattle Seahawks.
They're Arsenal.
They win 10 games. Well, yeah, no one. Neil is right now suggesting they are Arsenal. Well, the old Arsenal, the Arsene Wenger Arsenal, not the new Arsenal.
No.
And Neil is still predicting them to be Arsenal by making the playoffs with 10 wins. Perfectly reasonable. My 3 NFC wildcard teams are the 49ers, the Seahawks, and the Vikings. I really didn't want to pick the Minnesota Vikings for a multitude of reasons, but struggled to pick anyone else. Neil, give me the AFC title game, please, and where it will be held.
The AFC title game will be played in Kansas City, and it will be a repeat of the Kansas City Chiefs and Buffalo Bills that we saw last year.
I have Chiefs against the Bills. However, I have it this time in Buffalo. NFC title game, Neil.
It will be held in San Francisco, and the visitors will be the Minnesota Vikings.
I have the 49ers travelling to SoFi Stadium to meet the Los Angeles Rams. Super Bowl and result, Neil.
Super Bowl will be a rematch of 2 years ago. It will be the Chiefs against the 49ers, but it'll be the same result, and the Chiefs will win it.
Okay, I've got Chiefs over Rams. I'm going to give you 38-28.
High scoring?
High scoring, yeah. And hopefully the halftime show will have better audio. We also wanted to do, as it being a fantasy show and all, some predictions on top scorers and some surprises and flops. So, Neil, who will be the top scoring quarterback this season in fantasy?
Well, the top scoring quarterback, probably because he's going to have to throw a bit more now, on top of the fact that he always runs himself, it will be Lamar Jackson.
I also picked Lamar Jackson, which I thought was quite a cool pick. Then all of his running backs went down, and it seems less cool now because he will have to do all the running, and yet we would expect him to throw more.
Mamas don't let your babies grow up to be Ravens running backs.
Correct. Neil, who is your top scoring running back for this season?
Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, same. Dalvin Cook. I don't question marks over Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry, who I will get on to later. I think Dalvin Cook is the most obvious choice here. Who is your top scoring wide receiver for 2021?
Tyreek Hill.
My top scoring wide receiver is Calvin Ridley, Atlanta Falcons. Volume is king, as Neil has quite rightly pointed out, and I've loved him since the beginning, and he hasn't let me down so far. Neil, who is the top scoring tight end?
Going to surprise you. Travis Kelce for the 6th season in a row.
Which is absolutely frightening. I think he's got 5 1,000-yard seasons on the run, which is crazy. In my top scoring tight end is TJ Hawkinson of the Detroit Lions. So a few more off the ball suggestions to liven things up. I expect Hawkinson to, as Neil has said throughout the season in many articles and on this show multiple times, he seems to be the most likely person to get a lot of targets from Jared Goff, and volume is king. Neil, what player will be the biggest fantasy surprise this season?
Well, I think Blake Jarwin, who no one seems to want to roster, even though last season, even with the big 3 wide receivers, the Cowboys force-fed targets to Dalton Schultz. And Blake Jarwin is a better football player than Dalton Schultz. I'm sure Dalton Schultz is a lovely fella, solid citizen, pays his taxes, keeps his lawn tidy. Blake Jarwin's a better player. So I think he's going to be... You don't like to use the term because it's the very rare ball. I think he's got a good chance of being this year's Logan Thomas.
It's not a surprise based on where he's drafted in real life. However, across many scores, I've seen Devontae Smith getting around 190 points in fantasy this season. I expect him to get well over 250 and be a top 10, 5 wide receiver in fantasy this year.
Jesus.
So brace yourself, Neil. Keep your pants on where appropriate. Chal, this one isn't for you, but I do believe that Devontae Smith will be seen in 2022 as one of the elite wide receivers who you have to pick up in your fantasy team. Biggest fantasy flop, Neil?
Saquon Barkley. because where he's going, we still don't know if he's fully healthy. Now, Saquon Barkley is one of the most impressive physical specimens to play running back since maybe Jim Brown. But look at his splits without Eli Manning. With Eli Manning, he's an elite fantasy performer. With Daniel Jones, he's a good player.
So just to double check, Neil, when he has a Hall of Fame quarterback with him, I'm joking many times because obviously Eli Manning is about as Hall of Fame worthy in reality as me and Neil.
But one of the big differences is when Eli Manning was the quarterback, Saquon commanded 80% of the team's rushing yards. With Daniel Jones, it's 62%, because Daniel Jones will take off and run himself. So if he's taking off and running himself, that means he's not targeting the running back, which again is a ding for Saquon. Plus, we have to say that this offense is not likely to be complex because it's being orchestrated by Call Me Coach Jason Garrett. And in case you remember, back to when we talked about the NFC East, this team is garbage from the top down.
Yep.
And is worse than the Eagles.
Ooh.
You mocked. I'm right.
I did mock, and that's a tough argument to pick, but we won't get into it. My biggest fantasy flop is Derrick Henry. I believe by the end of the season, given the amount of volume he has received, that he won't be a top 10 running back in this league. Ironically, as I picked him in our league of record, didn't really want to, but we did. But I do believe I think he had 370 plus touches last year. People don't usually recover from that. If Henry does, bravo to him. And we do know, based on memes and Instagram videos, that he isn't human. So, it may be the case. But yeah, I am concerned greatly about Derrick Henry and what will happen to him, especially as there could be a chance that they've got AJ Brown and Julio Jones and they just kind of just throw it to them all the time because it's like centaurs running around in ancient Greece.
Having the worst defense in the NFL, which is in their range of outcomes, doesn't help Derrick Henry either.
If only they had a defensive head coach to be able to deal with a terrible, terrible defense.
Well, bear in mind, this is a head coach who did say he'd cut his own penis off to win the Super Bowl. Well, maybe if you just invested in the cornerbacks, you could save your tackle and just you might
get
have
a pass
chance.
Rush. Maybe get a pass rush for penis.
But as we know, mates, it's a lot harder to find franchise cornerbacks than it is quarterbacks. So
it's a very good point. If they're the predictions, that is plugged into the mains for week one. Usually, obviously, we will talk 3 major storylines that have happened in week one and beyond. But yeah, this week, plugged into the mains, prediction heavy. As always, when we do predictions, please remember them. If they are accurate, please ignore them and destroy them like it's an episode of something out of Mission Impossible if we are completely and utterly wrong. Let's move on, and Neil is going to give us his 3 fantasy darlings for week one.
Hello, darling.
Well, I think it's important in fantasy, as with most things in life, that you set a standard. As a recently departed actor, as one of his characters says, every man has to have a code. And our code this year should be we should bully the Lions and the Texans whenever we get the chance.
That's correct.
So, keeping in mind that last year the Detroit Lions were an absolute sieve in terms of running back fantasy scoring, running back points, a fantasy darling this week is Raheem Mostert. Now, I know a lot of people thinking, well, everyone's heard of him. Well, why aren't you starting him? Because he's on an awful lot of these fantasy rosters, but I'm looking at the starting percentages and he's not. Now, yeah, it may be a share with Trey Sermon, but they're going to run a lot because the Lions stink. So when they get up early, Mostert is the best bet to take 70 yards to the house. He doesn't need the 15 carries that Trey Sermon will get. Mostert can hit them hard and hit them fast. So I just think he's someone that if you've got him on your roster, you need to be starting him this week.
Also, don't forget, the San Francisco 49ers aren't running against the Lions because the Lions stink. The San Francisco 49ers are running because that's what they do, and that's what they will do the whole season. So it helps tremendously that the Lions stink, and we will come back to this kind of concept in my fantasy prediction of the week. But yes, Raheem Mostert makes perfect sense, Neil.
As I say, as a great man once said, in the letter from the Corinthians to Paul, run as if to win. That's what the 49ers will do.
Number 2, Neil.
Number 2, it's someone who had a impressive, I think, rookie season, but has been overshadowed by a rookie who apparently can't catch the ball because it's different to what it was in college. And that's T. Higgins. They're playing the Vikings. They're probably going to have to be playing from behind, which means Joe Burrow is going to have to take to the air. And if Jamar Chase is struggling, I'm not saying that what allegedly he said is true. It sounds bunk to me. But if he is struggling, then it makes sense for Burrow to trust to someone who he has developed the chemistry with. The Vikings defensively are going to be better than they were last year. They can't really be worse, but they're still not great. So I think T. Higgins is someone who could see a lot of volume. He's certainly a red zone threat as well, so he has that touchdown upside. As I say, I just think that people may be worried that he might be just a wide receiver 3, but he's someone who I definitely think is going to be the wide receiver 2 airspace this week.
Jamar Chase has fell into the preseason disaster algorithm that befalls many players year on year, where it hasn't gone very well. He didn't play last year. There was debate about whether they should take him or not. He was seen as transcendent, and at the moment that hasn't been the case, and therefore, the world is officially ending. I dread to even dip a small toe into Bengals Twitter at the moment. Luckily, I guess, is that it's not like Penei Sewell has blown the doors off in his preseason moves in Detroit. Because if he had been a star, pitchforks may have been out in Cincinnati.
Oh God, yeah. But bear in mind, Cincinnati have one local paper, and I think they have 2 beat reporters. If Jamar Chase had been struggling, if it wasn't for Twitter, we might have waited 16 years to find this out.
True. Who is your final fantasy darling for week 1, Neil?
My final fantasy darling, because as we know, and as you pointed out several times already, volume is king. But one of the most important things to remember in fantasy is revenge. So that's why my third fantasy darling this week is Sam Darnold. Because he is playing his old team, the Jets. The Jets cornerback room has no one who was taken above the 5th round in the NFL draft. It wasn't good last year. It's even worse this year. Now, I know Robert Saleh is a very good defensive coach, or was he a good defensive coach who had good defensive players? This is the argument. But he can't he's not going to conjure up 2019 Richard Sherman out of his arse and make this secondary better. You have DJ Moore, you've got Robbie Anderson, more revenge. You've got Terrace Marshall. I'll never trust him because his name's Terrace and not Terrence. You've got Denny Carter's new poster boy, Dan Arnold. You've got Christian McCaffrey. I just think Sam Darnold is going to have the chance to pick this team apart in the secondary because they've got no pass rush as well because of the New York Jets and they don't believe in him and haven't ever since John Abraham left. I think Darnold is going to put up absolutely monster numbers this week. He'll suck for the rest of the year, but he'll always have week 1.
I think what you've also forgotten is, Neil, that he is free at last from the stink of Adam Gase. He's de-shackled himself from that enigma of a human being. And let's be honest, when that has happened to other offensive players, the likes of Ryan Tannehill, the likes of Robbie Anderson, the world has become a much better place for those players. So I do like the Darnold angle, and as you said, revenge is always cool.
We do And we have to factor this in fantasy and real life. Based on what he has shown us, and based on who he's been coached with, there is just a chance that Darnold is actually shit.
There's not. Yeah, there's more than a chance.
Yeah, we might not be able to blame everything on Adam Gase, but it's week 1, and he knows these people. So
yeah, I think Neil raises a good point. It should be noted that Ryan Tannehill had shown flashes of talent, as had Robbie Anderson. They just struggled greatly under Gase. I'm not 100% sure, with the possible exception of one of his first few weeks, that Donald has ever shown major upside. But we shall see. And, as people regularly tell me, I believe he is still younger than Joe Burrow. So, there we go.
I mean, it's just one of those that if you are I know every player is different, every circumstance is different, and when we compare people, we are comparing range of outcomes. But Sam Darnold threw a pick 6 on his first ever NFL pass attempt. I'm sure Jameis Winston did as well.
It's not good news. It's not good news. Speaking of bad situations and bad times, Neil's about to give us the fancy loser for week 1.
Well, I thought I'd go with, I'd stay on brand, and I'd go with a tight end. Now, the New England Patriots were not at their best last year on either side of the ball. The defense was lesser than it had been in 2019, certainly, but they were still quite solid against tight ends. Now, the Miami Dolphins have a tight end, Mike Gesicki, who was very productive last year. He was more productive when Ryan Fitzpatrick was a quarterback than Tua. Now, I'm not saying that Tua hasn't taken steps this year. I like Tua. I think I like seeing left-handed quarterbacks. It's a break from the norm, as it were. But I just think his game is going to be more based on getting the ball to people who are open, and that's not Mike Gesicki's shtick. It's not Devontae Parker's either. They're thrown up to me, I'll catch it. Whereas Tua, I think, is going to look for other people. So Gesicki is not going to be a volume option. Plus, as well, I can't help but thinking he's in a contract year, and they drafted Hunter Long. I just think Hunter Long is going to eat into his workload as the season goes on, and we'll see less and less of Gesicki. But for this week, I think we're going to look at it. It's going to be interesting to see what type of offense they put out against the Patriots, especially because they don't have Will Fuller. But I don't think Gesicki is going to be in line for a big week.
I'm not going to lie. You're suggesting that the Miami Dolphins drafted someone called Hunter Long, and I don't believe you because that name is too cool.
I think it's one of those. Hunter is one of those names that it just sounds cool. I mean, obviously the Bad Batch have got one. There was a detective show called Hunter in the late 70s, early 80s, and it was played by a former NFL player actually, who then went and appeared in Cheers as well. I can't remember his name though. It's going to annoy me, but I'm not looking for it now. Yeah, it's just one of those names, and there's been hunters before. Obviously, there was Hunter Smith, Hunter Henry. There's a lot of them about. It's a good, cool name. Of course, I'm going to wager that it might not be his real name. As bear in mind, Mac Jones. His name's Michael McCorkle.
I think we should just call him. I might just call him McCorkle from now on. I know Mina Kimes calls him McCorkle, and I think it's super cool because it degrades him. So when he's won his 4th Super Bowl, I'm still going to be calling him McCorkle.
He's McCorkle, and the fact that he wants to be McCorkle rather than Michael. I mean, Michael Jones. I think we've all met or know several Michael Jones in our lives. They're good, solid people. If you see them, they'll wave, they'll say hello, they'll ask you how your kids are, but will never remember their names. Yeah. But I just can't trust them as a quarterback. Whereas McCorkle, you have my attention.
You had me at hello. Mm-hmm. Fantastic, Neil. So we have darlings of Mostert, T. Higgins and Darnold, and Gesicki as our fantasy loser this week. So Neil, let's get on and give everybody our fantasy prediction of the week. I'm going to go first, Neil. And your number one fantasy darling was Raheem Mostert. My fantasy prediction for this week is that Raheem Mostert will be the top scoring running back in the whole of fantasy. As Neil quite rightly points out, he's playing the Lions, and in theory, that's Neil discussed. He can break a 75-yard touchdown run. So let's say he gets 2 touchdowns. and like 130 yards, and there you are, top scoring running back, Raheem Mostert. Neil, what is your fantasy prediction for the week?
My fantasy prediction of the week, and by the time people listen to this, it may have come true, but Blake Jarwin will be a top 5 scoring tight end this week. The Buccaneers, if they have a weakness, and they don't, is that they allowed the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends last season. Now, as we know, famously, they've brought the whole band back, which means the same weaknesses might exist. So while Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup might have difficult times on the outside and in the slot, Blake Jarwin might have slightly easier pickings working the middle of the field and the seams. So I like him to get a decent target share, probably find the end zone, and then people will be gutted that they didn't pick him out because he'll be one of the first people off waivers in week 2.
Fantastic, Neil. Fantastic. Who do you think finds out first that we slighted them? You slighting Bill Belichick for his inability to coach a playoff team, or Tom Brady because neither of us picked them to win the Super Bowl?
I'll be honest, I don't think either of them give a shit about us.
I think you're mistaken. I think they can find slights from the smallest thing. If you're not, they are Michael Jordan-esque if you've watched the Michael Jordan documentary. Yeah,
I did used to think that Aaron Rodgers was the pettiest, smallest person in the NFL, but after reading the Athletic piece on Tom Brady, where he was their number 1 player of all time, it's hard to argue with it, is it? He just came across as A, driven, B, petty, and I don't know which of those has sustained him more throughout his 2 decades of excellence.
I think having both of them is epic. I like the idea that like the world thinks that him and Peyton Manning should hate each other, and secretly they don't.
I don't think it's a secret.
No, but what I mean is, it was a secret, and then like Peyton retired, and like we're mates. Like Tom Brady came to my Hall of Fame speech, and you're like, that's weird. All we talked about was how much you didn't like each other, and like, no, I had nothing against him.
I gave him my best play, and wish I hadn't. It's what Peyton did.
Correct, Neil. While everybody is waiting for week 1, where can they catch you and listen to you and read you?
You can find me on the Twitter at ndutton13. I have 1 column out this week so far. It's the tight end streaming article I write for Rotoviz. As I say, by the time you read this, 1 of them will have already played. So if you didn't pick Blake Jarwin, that's your tough luck. But there are still 2 more players I've spoke about. Moving forward, I will have Super Bowl odds tracker for number 5. That'll be out weekly. And I will have the tight end report, where I will break down all the stats and information you need from the previous week's tight end to try and help you make your decision in the week ahead. But that's for another time. It's week 1. By the time you listen to this, there will have been a game. There will be more games on Sunday. Let's enjoy this.
I am at Minty7 combined. We are at waxing_lyrical. Whether you're going to watch your team this week, whether you're going to watch Red Zone, whether you're going to do both, enjoy it, because it's back. And so are we, on a weekly basis, talking about the NFL with a fantasy lens. Until next week, enjoy week 1, and these top guys are out.